Someone had told me that this topic about autism was going to, you know, be discussed as much as it was, or have so many people in my DMs. I would have literally told you you're lying. But I'm so glad that we are having this conversation and that it is helping moms out there, because I got a lot of messages about how depressed and alone some people felt. But if only I could share my DMs on how many moms actually are in the same boat, and dads. I got messages from dads too. You would actually be shocked. So, hey guys, it's Kenya here, and I'm so happy to have just this conversation and this opportunity to just highlight some things. I want to get straight to the point. I'm also trying to make longer videos, so bear with me. But I think the first two videos were just kind of an introduction and just some questions that I've been asked about autism, and I promised people that I was going to get into more specific things. So I'll start off by saying that, guys, this has just been what's worked for me and my son, which might be unique to us, but I think there's a lot of value in a lot of the processes that I've taken. So I'm not someone who likes to tell people what to do, but I can show you what I've done in hopes that it can do something for you, right? Number one about autism, which is what I find, is when your son or your daughter is diagnosed with autism, it's a diagnosis for two people. So it's you and your child. And this is what I find, because I think a lot of the time, you know, our kids are an extension of us, and the extension of us when they're thriving and they're doing really good. And they're also an extension of us when things aren't really great or what we would have wanted. Why I'm talking about this is because I really wanted to talk to the parents. I got so many messages from people that really, really meant a lot to me, because one, in some cases it was moms that kids were older. In some cases it was men. In some cases it was people who were just coming into the journey, and I could just resonate so much with them because I could really, like, it felt like it was just yesterday sometimes. So I'm here for that, and I'm here for the conversations, I'm here for the lives, I'm here for the help that we can get these kids, because these kids are really amazing and they really actually need it. So some of the things I want to talk about today were primarily for the parents. When you get your child's diagnosis, I think it's okay for it to be your diagnosis as well. And I'm going to start off by saying this. When you have an autistic son, because this is just such an uncharted field, there's still so much that's not really concrete or known or said in finality about the condition. And literally, you can see it in a group of kids where you can have 18 kids all with autism, but their mannerisms, their characteristics are completely nothing alike. So if you can imagine, it's like being told, you've got this thing that you have to deal with, but there's nothing we can really tell you about it. We can just, give you some suggestions of what to do to help. And that's what happens for a lot of moms who have autistic kids. And I'm also doing this video in hopes that it helps educate people around us. So to the parents, what I want to tell you is sometimes the diagnosis is a lot worse in our head than it actually is to everybody else in and around us. Now, what do I mean by that? When you go out sometimes, you are more aware or conscious of your own child than other people who don't even know that your child has a condition. So if you're on the other side where you have a neurotypical child and you don't know what we're talking about, when we come out with our kids with autism, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know if they're going to accept the crowd, the noise, the music, want to be a part of it or not. And so in our minds, we're just like, oh God, this could go any direction and any way. And I'm going to insert a little bit of a story time. I had a pool party at my house this time, and a few people came over, and my son threw someone's phone in the pool. And this was in front of everybody. And he was just being, a bit annoying in front of everybody. And then he threw the phone in the pool. So the phone was like the pinnacle of the behavior. And I remember just thinking to myself, oh my God. Right. And what I mean to both the parents and the people around us, to the parents, to somebody else who has a boy, they could just be like, boys are naughty, boys do that. But to someone with an autistic child, you'll be there being like, oh, it had to be my child to do this. How embarrassing. Now what do I have to do? At least if with my phone, that would be okay. Oh, are they judging me? Are they judging my kid? He's just a kid. He doesn't know how to do anything better. And we build all these big scenarios in our head. So the first thing I want to say to parents is sometimes breathe. Sometimes it's not actually the autism. Sometimes your child is just being a child. Okay? Some of the best advice I got was, when you have a child with a condition, it doesn't have to be autism. Sometimes you need to distance yourself from the actual therapies that the child is going through. So what do I mean by that? I can't be my child's teacher in some circumstances. Granted, I'm already a very impatient person. I don't have time for little people. I find little people very annoying. And that's just my piece. Okay, so I'm not the person who's going to be able to teach a child how to do something well already. Then when you have an autistic child, sometimes you need to almost just be their piece and not always like their primary teacher. So I have the OTs. My son will go for things like karate, he'll go for swimming. And if I want to watch how they're doing, I'll be there. But as far as me being the one who teaches them, it's sometimes to parents can be overwhelming because what you're doing is you're over like heightening the condition that you're seeing in your child all the time. Sometimes let your child be in a setting where someone else is dealing with your child in that setting for like an hour or 40 minutes and they're being paid to do that. I think it's very hard as parents when you make it a continuous thing where you're always with your child, teaching your child, doing this with your child, because you are also becoming overwhelmed with the situation. So sometimes the breakers and the pause are important, and that's how you can do it, by just not always being the primary teacher. Thirdly, as parents, which is why I'm saying we get the diagnosis a lot, you cannot in your mind already limit your child. You don't know what your child is capable of. And guess what? No parent is aware of what their child is capable of. Okay? And that's universal, that's worldwide. You know, a lot of the times, you know, people be like, oh, what do I do with my child, or where will my child go? Your child will go anywhere that other kids are going. Okay? They might just have their own path. And this is something I always say when I say I also got the diagnosis. As I said, I was not a patient person. I wasn't someone who used to think outside the box. I wasn't someone who, you know, I was also quite high performing in school. You know, I was in teams, I played a lot of sport, and I was, you know, around a lot of like high performing people. And when I got my son, I was like, I don't know how to deal with this, you know. But there was so much education that came to me pertaining to how you can learn things and how you can do things and how things can be done. Sometimes you as the parent are the one who's actually pigeonholed into thinking there's only one way to do things. There are lots of ways to do things. Lots of ways to do things. And sometimes you have to let your kids show you that there are lots of ways to do things. Okay? My kids are 14 months apart, and a good example of that is John knew how to operate his iPad, iPhone way before I do. I mean, he downloads his own apps and does his own things. I'm actually looking for a robotics class to take him to, because he just gets on with it. I can compare him with my about to be 4-year-old daughter. She needs a lot more guidance. She needs someone to open the iPad for her, go into YouTube. She hasn't been able to like make certain connections with things that are quite straightforward for my son. So a lot of the time you handicap your own son further, which is in a lot of circumstances the wrong thing to do, which is why I'm going to say a lot of the condition of autism is something as parents we have to actually accept and medicate ourselves. We have to actually be like, you know what, okay, I don't really know much about this. I don't really know how it's going to be for me, but I'm just going to have to get on with it and just go with the flow, because a lot of the time they're going to lead you, and that must be okay. And what you do with all your other kids might not be what you do with your autistic kid, but if you are a parent who actually studies their kids, probably what you do with your firstborn child and your lastborn child are different anyway, whether they have a condition or not. Parents, I'm also a realist. So what I would say is, if you are in group settings and your child is agitated and irritated, leave. I think it's okay. It's okay to leave and just be like, I don't really think that's his kind of setup. But at the same time, where else are they going to learn to be in those other setups? But there's a time and a place. There's a time when you know, like, we're not going anywhere with this. Let's abort mission. But I think that's something that you should also be cognizant of. We've all had to be taught to use the toilet. We've all had to be taught to do certain things, to sit at a table. And even normal kids find sitting at a table boring, right? So I think a lot of autism for parents and for kids is really their parents. I mean, someone once said to me, your child doesn't know they're autistic. You do. So your child doesn't know what you can't understand or what you can't cope and deal with. They're just looking at you being like, why is this person huffing and puffing so much? And why is this person so confused? So what I mean to say is these people don't even, they're in their own world where they're okay in their own world. And as parents, although it's hard and it's not really orthodox, it's not what we were taught, it's not what we're made to be equipped with. But sometimes it's bigger in your head and it's more of a deal to you than it actually is your autistic child. I'll give an example about schools. I wanted my son to go to a certain school, and at the time, it just wasn't what was on the table. And I huffed and I puffed and I felt like this is being ripped out, out of my hands and under my feet. And why is this the situation? Why is this the circumstance? And then someone was kind of like, but wouldn't you rather your child be somewhere where they're comfortable? And as parents, I think that's just kind of what needs to happen. You need to take yourself to a point where you say, I really actually want my child to be okay with themselves. Before I start worrying about if the whole world is okay with them, like I want my child to be, and for me, that's what I did with my son. My biggest fear when my son was going to school was, will he be able to tell me if someone is abusing him? Will he be able to tell me if he's not happy? Those were my fears. Not really, is he gonna like be Mr. Popular or be Mr. whatever. So, really, parents, I hope some of the things that I'm telling you are really helping you. I mean, no, it's going to make you feel better. And if you're not ready to accept it, you're not ready to accept it. And that's also part of the process. But what I want to tell you is the road is so much better when you do accept it and you do get on with it and you do acknowledge that this is what I'm dealing with. And also it helps you even in and amongst families, just like this is what I'm dealing with. And, when this is happening, this is something I have to deal with like this. And just sometimes give me space. Or, my big sister's very good at saying, how do you know he's just not being a boy right now? So as I said, I just really hope that I'm helping the moms and the dads. There's a dad who wrote me a really lovely message about his boys. And I just said to myself, how beautiful is that as a father to be on the forefront of that? Because it's a lot of moms who really battle with this. Because you get the blame. I was told I was drinking when I was pregnant by people who've never seen me out and about. I've been told so many things that made this condition happen. But it's like, it was always people who have no business talking to me or about me or my kids anyway. And I think that is something you need to have in your mind, that is your child. That's your portion. That's the portion God gave you. My mom always used to say, okay, if not you, then who? Who did you want God to give it to? So I really hope that somewhere out there for the parents, that really helps you think of things a little bit more broadly. And to really, your mind is really what's going to make the difference. Your mind and you not getting tired. And I'm going to go. The second part of this video is really going to be about just different types of therapies for the kids. And it's going to be a little bit unconventional, but these are things that I've seen that have helped me. So I mentioned that I don't teach my kids. I will. Don't get me wrong. My son is really sharp. At nighttime, going through certain cards, seeing if he knows what he's doing. I already know he knows because he's taught himself. Like, he's very, very sharp, my son. But what I want to tell parents is your kids learn from doing 1,001 things. It's not just classroom setting. It's not just knowing shapes, numbers, colors, and sizes. My son has learned discipline through doing karate. He's learned counting and understanding what counting is. Because anyone can just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But to actually know this is 1, these are 2, these are 3, these are 4. It's come from doing things like karate. He's learned, for instance, he has an occupational therapist, and my son used to hate getting his hands dirty. And that's like something that's quite common as well sometimes in boys. He used to hate getting his hands dirty, but then when he became obsessed with Play-Doh, I took that as an opportunity to be like, okay, if I teach him how to make Play-Doh, then he has to get his fingers dirty. And that's another way of teaching a child that it's okay to do this. You're not going to die. You're not going to like, your fingers are going to fall off. You know, you're having fun making something that you like. My husband, John's dad, is really good at like sending the kids to do things. So you teach your kids how to take instruction by asking them to do small things like taking their shoes to the shoe room or getting the car keys or getting the wallet. A lot of the time, you yourself tell yourself your child can't do that when your child is more than capable of doing it. You need to be more intentional and ask yourself, what do I want to get out of this child? And how can I do that? You know, my son loves water. So if it's in water, are we playing games while he's in water? What are we doing? How often are we swimming? You know, there was a time when it was really hard to calm my son down. And I'd heard about hippotherapy, which is when, you know, they kind of integrate horse riding and horse techniques with kids. And that would help him calm down a lot. And for some weird reason, sitting on a horse would calm my son down. You know, and he'd fall asleep on the horse sometimes. And that was part of the process. So what I would say is, with kids, because people will be like, oh, what's the therapist? What do I do? There's no formula. It's almost like you have to try 100 things and hope that out of the 100 things, 10 things work and help. So there'll be some people also who'll tell you things like, oh, screen time is bad for kids, which is true, it's bad for all kids, right? But we need to be realists. As parents, we're always on our phones. Our kids see us always on our phones, especially in our house. Oh, people are always on their phones. So they're on their phones too, but be mindful of what they do watch. My kids don't watch regular TV. They don't watch Netflix, they watch YouTube. Because on YouTube, and not even just YouTube, YouTube Kids. Because I know at most it's ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and little kids doing random things. I'm comfortable with that. And as long as there's a bit of education in it, and there's no violence and things like that, and you do have to be aware of the things that you do. For me, I was told I can't discipline my child. Which is true. You do then have to find other ways to get the discipline across. And so a lot of people were writing to me asking like if there's a textbook kind of approach or answer, but you are your own child's answer, which is probably the hardest thing to hear. I can only give you suggestions and ideas of things I've tried. You know, my son loves being outdoors. If your kid loves being outdoors, then find ways to integrate what they like doing there. But they are great schools, and I did want to actually talk about that. As I mentioned, I was really upset about my child being removed at the school he was at, but he found a really great school. The school's name is called Strive Academy in Zimbabwe. I don't know how many kids they can accommodate, but there are lots of moms who need this. So I can't tell you their numbers, and I can't speak on behalf of their capacity, but I can send through their numbers for people like that. As I always said, get a psychologist to come give you a good, up-to-date, like developmental stage progress of your child. That's also a really great place to start. Okay, and when it comes to occupational therapists, don't be your child's teacher. Get someone else who your child can get along with, and you pay them for that hour to do what you need them to do with your child in that hour. Sorry, got interrupted there by Minana. I just want to really say to parents with kids on the spectrum that you just have to accept that your world is different. But just because it's different doesn't mean it's not beautiful, and it's not got its own value. The one thing I think I'm really grateful for when it comes to my son was getting ahead of it. And although I felt that everything I wanted from my son was being stripped and taken away from me, doing it at the time that we did it was the best thing that we could have ever done for him, because he's doing really great right now. You know, and really, my son is so, like, intelligent that, I mean, a few days ago on my Instagram, I posted the story time that he told me, and he was telling me between a great white shark and an orca. And I was like, wait, an orca? Like, that's, like, a really, like, particular thing to know. I mean, I had adults messaging me being like, I had to Google what an orca was. And yeah, that's my son for you. He'll tell you a story that you will be like, what? Or he'll tell you something just so, like, you know, a moment when you're like, And that's also normal because most kids do that as well. So my best advice to parents, it's not really about the occupational therapy, it's not about the speech, but you do need these things. They need that extra push. And all you're doing as a parent is guaranteeing that you're giving your child the best input that you can give them. And that hopefully it's early enough. It's never too late. And that's also something I want to say to parents. Some parents are telling me, oh, I figured this out when my son was 14 or when my son was this. It's never too late. It's never too late. Just take your time, figure it out, and get on with it. And the world is really what you make of them. And the world has just become so unconventional in itself. So don't ever limit yourself. You know, my sister always joke around and be like, she was like, do you guys have like MIT and Harvard money? Because this boy's sharp. You know, and we made it a point over Christmas when we went to Boston to go to Harvard because I was like, yeah, because he can do it. And I'm going to get my son there by all means necessary. So moms and dads, especially the dads who do get it. And I know for some moms, you'll be in it alone. And it can be really tough because no one else gets it. You know, you're the one being blamed. When something goes wrong, it's your child. Which is why there was this one guy who wrote me this message. I just said to myself, wow. How beautiful is that? But there are also dads who are very hands-on. And they're there and they're in it as well. What I would say is really take time for yourself if you need it. Take time for your relationship if you need it. You don't have to be the one doing everything with your autistic son. If you have the money and the means, do delegate. And then always kind of check up on things and be like, okay, how's this going? And also see how it also comes back into the home. Because everything they learn outside there should manifest in the home, right? So I really hope that this was just a good video, just talking about, I really wanted to focus on the psychology of the parents today. That was really like my main goal. And also just trying to open and broaden people's minds. The second part mainly about the ways you can help your kids. There's no textbook answer. And what happened for my son and what we might not be case in point for yours, but there are lots of things you can do. This, there isn't anything I didn't try when it came to my son. I tried a lot of things. I prayed. I've done a lot of things. You as a parent need to be able to say when your son is older, handsome, tall, broad shouldered, you know, good looking like mine is, that my guy, I gave you my life. I gave you my life. And I think if you can say that when it comes to your kids, autistic or not, I gave you my life, you've done well. The outcome really is in God's hands, but you can do well. A mom asked me about potty training. As I said, I'm not my kid's teacher. I got really lucky that at Strive Academy, the school my son goes to, they take that very seriously. And this is why parents, you might be trying to keep your son or your daughter in a school that they're not supposed to be in, but you need to take them to the correct school. At Strive Academy, they're forced to have their own bag. They're forced to eat by themselves. They're forced to go to the toilet. It doesn't matter how many mistakes or messes that they make. That is what they want to encourage at the school, which ties in a little bit with what I was saying about being intentional about what you want for your child. You want your child to be potty trained. Take them to a school where potty training is important. A lot of schools will just be like, your child must come potty trained already. Your child must come and be able to swim already. Your child must be able to feed themselves and dress themselves. A lot of schools do that whilst they charge you through the roof. Then at Strive Academy, honestly, bless Tracy Shepherd. She's a lovely lady who also has an autistic son. So she takes it personal because she understands. And I think that is really great. Go to a school where the people really care and understand for what these kids' needs are. That was one of the questions that I can remember right now. You can DM me privately if you want any of the numbers. A lot of people wanted the tongue-tied doctor's numbers. I don't know how it works in the medical society because I know they're not allowed to advertise themselves. But I can definitely give you the number for the tongue-tie operation. My son did have that. It's actually a very straightforward operation, guys. Yes, they do go under anesthetic. But it's like an operation in 2-3 days that they're totally fine. I'm in Kumasoe, they just actually nick it with a nail and it's done. So if that's a surgery you want to do for your son, that's totally okay. Speech therapist, to be honest, I would say with autistic kids, just get them a speech therapist that they like. It's very important to get them a teacher that they like and can connect with. I'm currently trying to find a speech therapist. A lady who helped me, funny enough, was just some lady who used to be like an assisted speech person, so she wasn't really qualified. But she used to take the time and really go through a lot of things with my kids. And listen, I understand if money is a problem, and maybe you can't afford some of these things and you have to be your son's teacher. There's a lot of help online on how to teach kids, and you'll be shocked. What I would tell you about autistic boys is this. They know and they hear you and they understand. It's just they show you that they've understood it in their own time. I've been in so many situations where I've been saying something to my son repeatedly or doing something, and he's acting like he doesn't even care. Then, like a month later, exactly what I was saying, exactly how I was doing it, he'll say it and he'll just do it. So sometimes it's because your son can't speak. Don't think your son is dumb or doesn't understand or whatever. I think they can just be like people. No one really wants to be poked and harassed when they don't want to deal with whatever it is that you want them to deal with. That's something I think is really important. Something I also wanted to add is diet. Yeah, some people will say giving them sweet things all the time is really bad. Some people, and you do have to be ahead of that, but that's in general all kids. But yeah, with autistic kids, they can be obsessive. So they can be obsessed with one food particularly. And you are very unlucky if it's a bad food. So I'm lucky that my son is obsessed with like traditional food. So he loves chibage, maputi, biltong, things like that. The best thing is if you are seeing your child get an unhealthy obsession with food, try find something else to replace it with that's healthier. And if you can't control him, you just have to try not to buy it. When we do make like concentrated drinks for my kids, so like mazoe and the likes, we do dilute it. I don't like my kids drinking anything too sweet. Fizzy drinks aren't really something that we buy all the time in our house, but if they go out with their dad, yeah, they'll pick a fizzy drink. But as far as buying fizzy drinks as part of like my groceries, I won't do that. And yeah, I would say if your child is reacting to a lot of, but they'll be obsessed. Like my son can have like ice cream nonstop. If you're like, you need ice cream. They can be obsessed with certain foods. I don't really know what that is, but I think it does kind of come with a like compulsive nature of the condition, because they can like zone in on one thing and be hooked on one thing. I told you my son was obsessed with all McDonald's, and it took a while to integrate him into other things, but you do have to try. So even my son, there was a movie I showed him once, I think called Ant Bully on Netflix Kids. It was just on, and I just was like, he watched it. He can watch it 5 times in a row. So it's hard to introduce them to other things, but you kind of have to keep on trying. But as long as what they're obsessed with isn't unhealthy, I would say it's okay until they're ready to move on. It's not a nice thing to say, but money is important. These things cost money. People are charging. You're paying for people's specialism. You do need help. If you do have families that do help, you actually, I know there's a lady who was telling me she was thinking of moving from Dubai to Harare just to get their child the correct help. Those are the kind of decisions some parents are making. Guys, if I tell you my DMs sometimes, and I'm so grateful that people trust me with this. That's actually what made me do this whole thing, because I was like this. I would rather there be a lot of help available for people. People can go back to the videos. People can know exactly what they need, because maybe you'll watch the video, maybe you don't need the first part of the video, but you need the second part of the video. I mean, I can tell you so many stories, about this, but I'm not trying to point fingers and make people look crazy online, but you're not alone. There's a whole community of us, really.